Hello, mathematicians. I wanted to go over the answers to your first HoT of the year. For number 5, the angles here that are acute, sorry, let me get my pen ready. The angles that are acute, you can see here C is kind of less than 90 and E is less than 90. And then the ones that are obtuse are the ones that are kind of like wide open, like a door swinging wide open. So that would be A right there. And angle F, that looks like it's a little bit, just barely more than 90 degrees. And then the right angles, if you take a little corner of a piece of paper or something and fit it right into B and D, those would be right angles. Okay, moving on to the next one. Here we're looking at giving the degree of each angle. So we might have to do a little bit of fraction work here. Hope you're excited about that. So 1/6 of a right angle, if you're taking 1/6 of something, basically all you have to do is do 90 divided by 6. You're splitting it into 9 pieces. So if you do that division, you will get 6 into 30 is 5, so that's 15 right here. For B, it's 3/4 of a right angle. So if you think of a right angle and you want to know what 3/4 of it is, well, first you could split it into fourths, right? And then you're going to take 3 of those. So if you divide 90 by 4 and then multiply by 3, you would get 67.5. Another way to do that is to think of it as fractions. So then 3/4, you're actually doing 3/4 of a right angle of 90. Whenever you see that of in math, it very often usually means multiplication because you're taking that many groups of that. So you could think of it this way: 3 times 90 is 270. Remember, fractions, you multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom, and then 270, if you do 270 divided by 4, a fraction bar really just means division, then you would get 67.5. For C, you would do that similarly. For C, you have 5/4 of a right angle, so you would do 5/4 times 90, and you could follow the same steps. Or if you already knew that 1/4 of 90 was 22.5, then you could multiply that by 5. Okay, 5/3 of a right angle for D. This one, since we can take a right angle and very easily split it into thirds, this is kind of a good one to have, to always kind of have in the back of your mind, that a right angle split into thirds, each of those is 30. Okay, so this would be 30, this middle one is 30, and this one is 30. So if you have 5/3 of a right angle, this is 3/3, and then you had 2 more, you would altogether have, you would have 5 times 30 equals 150. Okay, so D, that's where we get that 150. But it's always a good idea to have in mind that 1/3 of a right angle is 30. Okay, 2/3 of a full turn for E. So if a full turn is 360, right, going all the way around the circle, that whole thing is 360. So 2/3 of that, well, first you'd need to figure out what 1/3 of 360 is. So you could just do 360 divided by 3, and that comes out to 120. So then if that would be 1/3, right? That would be like kind of that much. So then if you have another 120, you would have 120 plus 120. That's where that 240 comes from. And for F, we have 1.5 full turns. That means, like when we were doing the jumping rotations, you jump a full 360, and then another half turn would be another 180. So that 540 comes from 360, which is the full turn, plus the half turn, which is 180. That's where we get the 540. Oh my gosh, this is a mess. Sorry, that's so messy. All right. So the next part, what did we have to do next? Oh, okay. This one, you're kind of piecing together pieces. So you can see here, and we're going to talk this week about complementary and supplementary angles. This will come up. But here you can see like all together, this makes a straight angle. So if this part is 30, then to make it 180 altogether, you would need to subtract off, like cut out that piece, right? So you could do 180 minus 30 would give you 150. It was also asking for you to write an equation. So this is going into a little bit of kind of the first steps of algebra. So a lot of you guys didn't write it this way, and that's fine, but you could think of this as 30 plus this unknown amount, x, equals, well, that looks like a straight angle altogether, so it adds up to 180. So that's like the equation that you could write. Think of the x as just like a box, a question mark, a fill in the blank. And so then you subtract off the 30 to get 150. Same thing here on 14. We know that this little piece plus 125, it looks like together that makes a straight angle. So together that would be 180. And then if you kind of cut out that 125, you subtract it off, you'll get 55 here. Now for number 15, it's not going all the way flat, it's just making a right angle together here. So that would be this unknown amount, kind of this mystery x, plus 27 degrees together is 90 degrees. So if you subtract off that 27, cut that out, you're left with 63. And then for 16, you can see this is a full turn or a full rotation. So those added together, this mystery amount, when you add 35 to it, all together, you get 360. Okay, so if you cut out that 35, then you're left with the 325. Okay, this next one is kind of an interesting problem about a clock. And it says at the start of each hour, the minute hand points straight up at 12. And then you're going to determine the angle between the minute hand at the start of an hour and after that many minutes have passed. For each situation, sketch the angle and indicate the rotation of the minute hand. So these are like 6 separate problems. You're not like continuing on. Okay, so for A, it's looking at 15 minutes. So if the minute hand starts up at 12, imagine we have a clock over here, and after 15 minutes, right, 15 minutes after the hour is there, this is the 12, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so that would be a 90-degree angle. For B, we're doing 30 minutes, so you would start up at the 12, and then after 30 minutes, it's down, whatever, 3:30, 4:30. Okay, you've gone from the very top to the very bottom, so that's 180 degrees. For C, you're doing 20 minutes. This one is a little bit trickier. So it's going to point down here to like the 4, right? Imagine here's 3, 2, and 1. So one way I like to think of the clock is that, let's go back to the 15 minutes here. 15 minutes was 90 degrees. So if you kind of split this into pointing at each number, at the 1 and the 2 and the 3, you could think of each of these as 30 degrees, right? 30, 60, 90. So if every 5 minutes, every number on the clock is another 30 degrees, then you could count all the way around, right? If you go 12 to 1, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180, 210, 240, 270, 300, 330, 360. That gets you the full rotation. So each 5 minutes is another 30 degrees. Okay, so that's one way that you could think about it. So if you have 20 minutes here for C, you're going 30, 60, 90, 120. That's where that comes from. You could have also thought of 20 minutes as a third of an hour, right? 20 minutes, another 20 minutes, and another 20 minutes gives you a full hour. So you could have divided 360 by 3. There's lots of ways you could do it. Or you could think of how much is 1 minute. Okay, if 360 degrees equals 1 full hour, then 1 minute, how much is each minute? You would divide that by 60 minutes in an hour. So that would be 6 degrees. Okay, so each minute is 6 degrees. And you could multiply that by 20. There's a lot of different ways to think about this. Okay, for D, 1 full hour, that's the whole rotation. So that's 360 degrees. E, we're looking at 5 minutes. We actually already talked about that here. Each 5 minutes is 30 degrees. And then F, 1.5 turns, that's the full 360 plus another 180 gives us 540. Feel free to rewind and rewatch any part of this if that was fast and confusing. I'm trying to make the video not too long, but I know that was kind of fast talking. All right, the last section here is looking at a pizza. So imagine that you have a pizza and, oh, I think I can, does this let me do? No, that was the other part. Okay, so let's say we have a full pizza, and for part A, it's asking if you split this into 6 pieces. Oh my gosh, these are not very even pieces. My kids would be mad if they got the small one. But if they were all even, you would just take this full 360 degrees and divide by 6, right? If you cut that into 6 pieces, then you would get 60 degrees. For 8 pieces, you're just going to take the full 360 and divide it by 8. Or you could think of each of these as half of a 90-degree angle. 45 degrees is half of a 90-degree angle. Or you could do 360 divided by 8. And then for C, you have 10 pieces, so you would just divide 360 divided by 10, and that gives you 36 degrees per piece. All right, hope that helps. Please feel free to stay after class for office hours if you want any more clarification on any of those.